Democratic Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch, thank you so much and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
It's so good to be with you, Jack.
Nice to be with you. So here we are, as you and I are talking, we are 3 days away from Texas candidates being able to file their campaign paperwork. And yet, at least for the congressional races, we still have not heard from this three-judge panel at El Paso Federal Court about whether they are going to uphold or throw out these newly drawn congressional maps that seek to give Republicans 5 new seats in Texas. What do you make of this?
Well, hopefully they'll rule soon. They've had about 3 weeks now since the trial concluded. All the final briefing was done probably a week and a half ago or so. And so hopefully they'll get a ruling issued. They're very aware of the filing deadlines here in Texas. But we do need them to rule. We need to understand, what maps are we all going to be filing under? The existing maps, the new maps, or even possibly a redrawn map that they can certainly do as well.
Now, the filing deadline, of course, is 30 days after November 8th, Saturday. So it's Monday, December 8th. So there's still some time, but you're a candidate, the fact that you'll have less than 30 days. And then, of course, the U.S. Supreme Court may have to weigh in on this. How nervous does this make you?
Well, I mean, I'm not nervous. I know that I'm going to be filing for something. I just would like to know what. But we have until December. There's no magic rule that says you have to file on the first day. And so, we're just going to have to wait and see. Patience is a virtue, and I'm going to wait and see what the courts do so I can make a calculated decision of which district is best for me to run in.
Now, does this give any kind of indication, the court's timing, the fact that they still haven't made a decision, does it give an indication of how they're going to rule?
I don't think so. I think that from what I understand, that the trial went well for the plaintiffs. The witnesses for the Republicans were a disaster. They were all over the board. They were very inconsistent in their testimony. And from what I understand from legal experts, they're very optimistic that this judge panel is going to overturn the map. I do think it puts more pressure on the Supreme Court if they're going to reverse or whatever they're going to do in relation to the trial court due to the filing deadline. And so there may be some strategic maneuvering on their part to make it to where the Supreme Court wouldn't overturn their ruling because the filing period has lapsed. So who knows what their thinking is going into that. But obviously, December 8th is the deadline that we're all watching really closely now, not necessarily November 8th.
And now, after voters spoke, we know what's going on in California because voters there approved of the newly drawn maps by Democrats, which was a response to what happened here in Texas. So those new maps passed. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I thought it was great. I thought it was a resounding victory. It had record turnout and it won by a significant margin that the people are saying to Trump and Republicans, we don't like you trying to steal our elections. We don't like this mid-decade redistricting attempt that the Republicans are doing, and we're going to push back to protect our country and save our democracy. And I think that message was received loud and clear last night.
And what do you make of Republicans in California now filing suit trying to block these maps, claiming that they are unconstitutional because it gives Latino voters, Latino candidates an edge over everybody else?
Well, I'm not familiar with that lawsuit. I haven't seen it, but I think it's a day late and a dollar short. They had a chance to challenge the proposed maps. They've been out there for some time. They lost in the courts. I don't think they're going to be successful.
So let's talk about the government shutdown, which
Mhm.
is now the longest in U.S. history. We're talking on Wednesday, day 36. Is this become just a game of political chicken to see which party is going to blink first?
Well, it's not political chicken to me. I think this is really serious issues. People's health care is very, very important. And that is what I've heard from my constituents consistently is please do whatever you can to keep my health insurance stated. People's health premiums are significantly going up. if this were to pass by two, three, four times. And it's unaffordable for people to do that. So it's not a game to Democrats. This is a very serious business. It might be games to Republicans because they're not serious. They haven't come to the table. They haven't been working. They've been not in DC. The speaker has not called Republicans back this whole time to come and try to get something done. I've been in DC quite a bit. And, I know that many of my Democratic colleagues, the Senate's there, we've offered solutions to bring this thing to a table. So it's certainly not a game, and people's health care is a very serious issue.
Well, all the action though is in the Senate because the House passed the bill, the
Yeah.
clean CR. So it's really depends on what the Senate is going to do
Well,
because they don't have enough.
Senate Democrats have offered a proposal to open the government, maintain the status quo for the Affordable Care Act and SNAP, and Republicans in the Senate has voted that down 14 times. So they're not serious about reopening the government. There's a proposal that takes care of it all, that maintains health care for the American people, which is widely popular. And I think we've seen that last night with these electoral results that were consistent across the country with significant turnout, significant wins for Democrats, rejecting clearly the Trump administration and what these Republicans are doing. Even President Trump himself acknowledged that this shutdown was not going well for Republicans, and that's one of the reasons why they lost so badly last night.
He wants to end the Senate filibuster. What do you think of that idea?
I don't think the Senate is going to end the Senate filibuster. The thing about what is good for the goose is good for the gander. And the Senate flips back and forth control. And when you're in the minority party, and many of these senators that are currently sitting have been in the minority, and they've been in the majority, they've been on both sides of that deal, and they like the filibuster in place for their power when they're not in power. And so I don't see that they will eliminate that. The ending the filibuster has been a discussion of the Senate for decades since LBJ was in there. It's been a topic for the historians, and it's never wavered. And I don't think that this moment will get the Republicans to waver on it either.
I want to go back to what you talked about before as far as the health care and the fact that these premiums are set to go up. And we've heard that, and I'm wondering why. I mean, we know that the subsidies are set to expire. Let's move past that. But at the end of the day, does this expose the problem with the Affordable Care Act and the fact that it is not affordable for a lot of people without all these government subsidies?
No, I don't think it's a problem for the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act is doing what it is designed to do, which is to help people who can't access affordable insurance to have affordable insurance. It's making it to where they can afford to have health insurance, and that's part of the problem. I think that we need this program. We can't have 40 million people without health care coverage. If this goes through and all these folks lose their health insurance in Texas, then coupled with the Medicaid cuts, that's also going to make people uninsured. Our health structure cannot sustain it. And the part that I think is really critical for people to remember and understand, if you do happen to work for a large company that has employer sponsored healthcare, which is less than 50% of the people in Texas, you're going to pick up the bill. And it is going to be so expensive for you to have health cover, and many providers are just going to close because they can't absorb that much unfunded care. And so we need this to keep our health system going. In Congress, people come and see you. They call your office. I have had meetings with just virtually every kind of healthcare specialty in the state of Texas: hospitals, providers, hospitals, nurses, everyone, to a T, to a group, to a person. Please do whatever you can to keep the ACA tax credits. We can't sustain our health system without it.
But do you think that there could and should be ways to change this program so that it doesn't always rely on or face this kind of situation, make the program more affordable, give people other options so that this doesn't always become an issue?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I definitely think there's a lot wrong with our healthcare system. It's definitely way too expensive. There's all sorts of things that we need to do to bring down the cost of healthcare, healthcare transparency, PBM, and pharmacy benefit reform. There's a lot of issues out there that I think that could be done. Prior authorization, reducing some of the administrative costs. I have several bills on these issues. And yes, we need to have a comprehensive discussion as a country on healthcare in this nation and how people get it and how people get insurance to help pay for it. But the solution is not to gut the system we have until we have a system to replace it with. The solution is not to put 40 million people on the streets without health care. That is not the answer. The answer is to have a robust dialogue, have the committee process do its thing, have multiple hearings, bring groups and stakeholders to the table to really negotiate and come up with a comprehensive healthcare reform package that really brings down the cost of healthcare in this country. But the Republican plan just to cut it off at the knees and render 40 million people without access to healthcare is not the answer.
Last question for you about the shutdown. The Secretary of Transportation is now warning that if this government shutdown lingers on into next week, that they may have to shut down parts of the U.S. airspace because federal workers who aren't getting paid are not showing up. How serious is this in your mind?
That's very serious. Obviously, our country needs a robust transportation system, our business environment, the personal transportation needs of the American people and business and everything. Well, of course, that would be catastrophic to the American people and to our economy. And I hope Republicans are listening to that. They are in charge. Speaker Johnson is the only one that can call the House back in session. I cannot do that as a Democrat. This is on Republicans to actually get this done and lead and have us be there to get a solution. And right now, they're not doing it.
All right, we will leave it there. Democratic Congresswoman Julie Johnson, thank you so much. We
As
appreciate
always,
it.
as always, it's great to be with you, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you.